All right, guys. So Tucker Carlson tried to distance himself and Fox News from the Buffalo shooter. Tucker has been, an advocate of a softer version of the white replacement theory, or whatever they call it, the replacement theory. And I'll show you a video on that in a little bit, by the way. I can back up that claim with his own words. So you had a great replacement guy who was a terrorist in Buffalo and massacred black people and had, insane political ramblings. And a lot of people immediately pointed the finger at Tucker and was like, hey, dog, you do this, just a slightly watered down version of it. And so he knows what people are saying, and so he goes out there and he tries to respond to it. Let's see what he says.
But what he wrote does not add up to a manifesto.
Yes, it does.
It is not a blueprint for a new extremist political movement, much less the potential inspiration for a racist revolution. Anyone who claims that it is lying or has it.
That is such an absurd point. So, of course it's a manifesto. And he plagiarized this manifesto from a previous racist terrorist's manifesto. What does that mean? Like, it's not a manifesto. Like, what does that mean? You'll see the point he's trying to make, and it is a Weasley one.
Read it. Instead, Gendron's letter is a rambling pastiche of slogans and internet memes, some of which flatly contradict one another. The document is not recognizably left-wing or right-wing. It's not really political at all. The document...
That's just a lie. I've read parts of the manifesto. I've read quite a bit of it. It's overtly political. And to say it's not left-wing or right-wing, what? Come on, man. Come on. Some of the goofy-ass arguments I heard about why he's definitely left-wing is that there was one part where he cited a Jacobin article. The Jacobin article was just about cryptocurrencies. He was like anti-cryptocurrencies. He wasn't citing it to agree with leftism. In fact, he said in the manifesto that leftism leads to degeneracy and like the downfall of society. What are you talking about? How can you say it's not political? It's overtly political. It's the most obviously political document I've ever seen in my life. So it's so Weasley. It's so Weasley. But he's about to tell you exactly why he's doing this and why he's saying this.
Is crazy. It's the product of a diseased and organized mind. At one point, Gendron suggests that Fox News is part of some global conspiracy against.
So the reason why he says it's not political, it's not left-wing or right-wing, is so that he can go on and say, it's crazy. It's just mental illness. Here's why that's Weasley. Because if you say it's mental illness, if you say it's crazy, then he's saying it's out of bounds to discuss the ideological roots of how he got to where he was. That's why that's a huge problem, and that's why it's super evasive, and it's him obscuring, and it's him deflecting. Because think about it like this. When there's an Al-Qaeda terror attack, does everybody go out there and say, it's just mental illness? It's just mental illness. Or is the conversation, hey, yeah, maybe mental illness plays a part, but a huge part of it is ideological brainwashing, where people are taught, hey, this extremist version of Islam is the true Islam, and, you're not a good Muslim unless you act in accordance with that. See, when it comes to that, he would have no problem making the value judgment and saying it's not just mental illness, it's also ideological brainwashing. But when it comes to a white supremacist terror attack, a guy who believed in the Great Replacement, all of a sudden it's, no, it's just mental illness. It's not even political. It's not left, it's not right, it's not political. That is super dishonest, ironically, as he's accusing other people of being dishonest. Now, look, I think that, yes, an aspect of what this guy did involved mental illness. I think he probably was mentally ill. But does that describe the entirety of why he did what he did? Of course not. There's, millions of mentally ill people, and 0.0000001% of them end up doing something like this. So clearly, a huge component here, a huge factor here was ideological brainwashing, going down that alt-right pipeline, believing things that are factually untrue about phrenology and eugenics and fake race science. But he doesn't want to grapple with that. And the reason why he doesn't want to grapple with that is because he has pushed a softer version of the same ideology. Now, of course, Tucker doesn't want to, he wouldn't, and he doesn't want people to go out and murder minorities. That's not what he wants. But he definitely wants policies that would be overtly discriminatory against various minorities. Like, for example, when he praised, I think it was called the actual name of it, Operation Wetback, in the 1960s, which is almost exactly what it sounds like, which is, hey, let's limit the flow of immigrants from brown countries because it changes the nature of the, European American society. So if you support things like that and you're super hawkish on immigration, well, own the fact that part and parcel with that is dehumanization and scapegoating. Now, again, you might not want, your ideal solution is not a bullet to the brain, but your solution is like, let's continue to dehumanize and then let's deport. So all you have to do is be crystal clear. Hey, these are people too. Do not dehumanize. I have a conservative position on immigration, but that doesn't mean these people are inferior. That doesn't mean these people are evil. That doesn't mean these people are criminals. It just means I want a more orderly process to get into the country. Something to that effect. But he can't do it. He can't do it.
He writes like the mental patient he is, disjointed, irrational, paranoid. Now that's true, not that it makes the atrocities he committed easier to bear. If your daughter was murdered on Saturday in Buffalo, you wouldn't care why the killer did it or who he voted for. But the truth about Peyton Gendron does tell you a lot about the ruthlessness and dishonesty of our political leadership.
Tucker has one point, and he will always come back to it. He has one argument that he uses over and over.
Within minutes of Saturday's shooting, before all of the bodies of those 10 murdered Americans had even been identified by their loved ones, professional Democrats had begun a coordinated campaign to blame those murders on their political opponents. They did it, they said, immediately. Patron Gendron was the heir to Donald Trump, they told us. Trumpism committed mass murder in Buffalo. And for that reason, it followed logically, we must suspend the First Amendment.
So you see what he did there? The conversation is about a white supremacist terrorist who just massacred at least 10 innocent minorities. And the key thrust of his argument towards the end became, aren't Democrats terrible? Aren't they dishonest, lying hacks? Let's talk about how they're the problem in the context of some white supremacist terrorists massacring people. Look, if you want to have a conversation about the First Amendment, and you want to have a conversation about censorship, if you want to have a conversation about rigid partisanship that, there were some headlines that were blaming all Republicans for what this terrorist did. That's absurd. It's wrong. It reaches way too far. It's honestly brainworms if you truly believe that 150 million people or whatever it is in this country are responsible for the actions of this one person. No, he's going to be viewed as a fringe extremist even by people in the Republican Party. There's a fair point there. But he didn't sufficiently grapple with the actual problem that we're talking about here, which is the extreme radicalization of a disaffected white kid who ended up believing in a vicious militant version of white supremacy where he massacred innocent people. So, again, it's deflecting the conversation to a different topic. Again, I'm willing to have that conversation. There are plenty of people on the left and in the Democratic Party who are way too pro-censorship, way too anti-First Amendment, and are ruthlessly partisan where they just dismiss anybody who leans right. That's fair, but that's not the conversation we're having. But that's the conversation he wants to have. Because he has one argument. Democrats dumb, liberals stupid. That's the only... Everything comes back to that. Everything comes back to that. Tucker, that's not a political ideology, I hate to tell you. That's just you being the mirror image of the thing you claim to despise. Because you say, oh, look at them, they're super partisan and they're hacks. Well, what the fuck are you? What are you? Okay. So we talked about the whole great replacement theory. This isn't even all the times he's mentioned it or something similar. But look at this. Look at this.
Now, I know that the left and all the little gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, if you suggest that the Democratic Party is trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots, with new people, more obedient voters from the third world. But they become hysterical because that's what's happening, actually. Let's just say it. That's true. Let's say that again for...
All right. I mean, he's using the word replacement in a straightforward way. Now, by the way, allow me to say this. That argument is not even true. Donald Trump increased his numbers with Hispanics. So the argument that, like, Democrats just want to bus in people with darker skin in order for Democrats to win moving forward. Well, why are you just conceding this idea that demographics equal voting patterns in perpetuity? That's not true. In fact, you've seen Democrats are sort of hemorrhaging Latino support. So if you believe in your message of, right-wing politics, why wouldn't you think, hey, even if these new voters come in, I'll win them. I'll change their minds. I'll get them on my side. Why doesn't he make that argument? It's almost like he doesn't make that argument because he just doesn't want those people in the country no matter what. Oh, and he doesn't want white people to be replaced.
Emphasis because it is the secret to the entire immigration debate. Demographic change is the key to the Democratic Party's political ambitions. In other words, you're being
These aren't even dog whistles. These are human whistles. These are fucking foghorns.
replaced, and there's nothing you can do about it. So shut up. I mean, they're trying to change the population of the United States. And they hate it when you say that because it's true. Our country's being invaded by the rest of the world. Let me just state unequivocally, the country's being stolen from American citizens as we watch. In political terms, this policy is called the Great Replacement, the replacement of legacy Americans with more obedient people from faraway countries.
Oh, I mean, you can't tell me he's not pushing a softer version of that same ideology. You can't tell me that. It's right in front of you. It is black and white. It is clear as day. Now, again, I would disagree with anybody who says he's directly responsible, but just because he's not directly responsible, he's not legally responsible, doesn't mean there's not a moral and ethical question there, and he should reevaluate, like, Jesus Christ, like, maybe some of the things I'm saying are leading to this climate, which leads insane people to do X, Y, or Z. It's not okay. It's not okay. And then people will make the argument, yeah, but didn't a guy in like 2017 who was a Bernie Sanders supporter end up shooting Steve Scalise? You got this guy who was a killer and he did it in the name of like a left-wing ideology. And like, what's the response from lefties? What's the response from lefties when that happens? They go, holy shit, we condemn this. This is bad. When we go after the wealthy, our point is, hey, let's tax them more, not let's line them up and murder them. So, no, we're not with this. This is terrible. This is bad. That's the reaction. Whereas Tucker just deflects and obfuscates. All right. Let me give you one more. Tucker Carlson calls Iraqis semi-literate primitive monkeys in 2008 interview. Semi-literate primitive monkeys. This is just to give you a sense of, like, when he feels like he's not going to get scrutinized. He was on some Bubba the Love Sponge show or some shit, some bro-y show, and he feels like, he thought this wasn't going to really get archived in the long run. He didn't know he was going to become a huge cable news host. And when he's letting it all hang out, this is the shit he says. This is the shit he believes. So if Iraqis are semi-literate primitive monkeys, what are Mexicans? What are, fill in the blank, Ecuadorians? What are black people? If this is what he's willing to say, and by the way, again, this is in the context of, like, we are illegally invading this country and massacring civilians and torturing. And he looks at that situation and says, they're semi-literate primitive monkeys. Flat dehumanization. Like, this is what he thinks of the innocent people who are being killed. This is what he thinks of the people in the country that we illegally invaded. I don't think I need to say anything else. I think all this stuff speaks for itself. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.